You're listening to Served Up, a podcast that features inspiring beverage professionals and topic experts that share their passions through meaningful conversations. I'm your host, Bridget Albert, also known as the Market Fresh Mixologist, an industry mentor with decades of experience. Grab a cocktail and sit back. Let's learn how we can make a positive impact in our industry. Hey, y'all, it's Bridget here. Today, we are joined by a true champion of Irish whiskey, a man whose passion for the craft is as rich as the heritage of the drink itself. Stephen Halpin, an esteemed brand ambassador for Busker's Irish Whiskey, has dedicated his career to sharing the stories, flavors, and traditions that make his spirit one of the world's finest. Stephen's journey into the world of whiskey began with a simple but profound nudge from his grandfather in Ireland, a moment that would shape not only his career, but his entire outlook on the spirit and its significance to Irish culture. With a deep-rooted connection to Ireland's whiskey history and an unwavering commitment to promoting its future, Stephen stands at the forefront of the beverage trade, advocating for the authenticity and excellence that define Irish whiskey. Whether it's through his work as a brand ambassador or his personal story, Stephen is a true Irishman in every sense, generous, knowledgeable, and always eager to raise a glass to the spirit of his homeland. So sit back, relax, grab yourself your favorite Irish whiskey, and enjoy the show. Stephen, welcome to Served Up. I'm really happy to have you on the show today.
I'm super excited to be here. Yeah, looking forward to it.
Well, thank you. Can you tell our listeners a bit about yourself? You know, how did you get into beverage? Did you grow up always thinking you were going to be in beverage? Or did you think maybe you were going to be like a rock star or an astronaut or something?
You take it back further than I normally talk about my story, but I guess it's a good question because most of my stuff talks about I grew up in Ireland and I came to the States for college, and I guess we can come back to that in just a second. But I grew up in Ireland in a house where my parents didn't drink. I didn't drink until I came over to the States and got it a few years after I came to college. But I had bartended from when I was 16. And that had been just something that was a great opportunity that literally fell at my feet. My grandfather had lived in a house almost all of his life that he had rented. He was the last on his street that needed to move out. And the buyer of this new big hotel gave him a sweetheart deal of moving him into a new home rent-free for the rest of his life. And so in that place, a gorgeous hotel was built right in the center of Dublin. And one of his things was he said that he wanted his grandson to be able to work at that hotel when it opened. And so that was part of the deal. And so I got a bartending gig in a gorgeous hotel at the age of 16, where I really shouldn't, or at least should have worked as a porter or barback and worked my way up. But that's kind of where it began.
That is insane. You were 16 years old in Ireland, bartending. It just boggles my mind because, here in the United States, that you just would not be allowed to do that. Is that hotel still there?
Yeah.
What's it
called? The Mespel Hotel. It's right on the Grand Canal, right in the center of Dublin.
Wow. And is it like a Hyatt or a Marriott or like a little boutique hotel?
Even know. To be honest, I've gotten more into knowing the differences now, and I haven't thought that much about it. I need to look it up. I'll definitely find that out after this because that's interesting to know.
Well, I think your story so far is super interesting to know. Yeah. So take us from when you were 16. Holy crap. Yeah. I was just learning to drive when I was 16, certainly not making martinis. So tell me about, then kind of take us to where you are today.
Yeah, we have the reverse rules. You can't really learn how to drive until you're 18 in Ireland, but they'll let you bartend at the age of 16. And essentially, if you can see over the bar, especially back at that time, you were going to get served. And so, but for me, it was a very different style. I was used to when I was bartending in Ireland. People are there to see each other in bars. Like it's much more, the bartender is to be seen and not heard, and to be prompt and to know everyone closes out after a round, everyone cashes out immediately. And so you need to know your prices of everything, be fast, efficient. And most of the time you're just working by yourself on quiet shifts. So you're your own bar back, you're washing, cleaning and doing all of that stuff and watching the bar. And so I became very good at that part of it. But I wasn't very conversational. I was just efficient. And so when I came over to the States, as we say in Ireland, I waffled my way into getting this job. I kind of told them that I had worked at this amazing bar and I was a bartender. I'd been bartending for 2 years. So I was an easy hire at a local Outback, which was close to where my college campus was in Tampa, Florida, at the University of South Florida. And so I got this job as a bartender. And again, it should have been something that I had worked my way up. Most of the other bartenders had been servers there and had gotten to know the food menu and all of this stuff. And I came in with some experience, which wasn't the norm in that college town. And so I was thrust into bartending at this bar, having never made anything more mixed than a gin and tonic. It just was not the way it was in Ireland, like no mix and stuff beyond a 1-in-1. And so, I was resilient and figured it out and semi-charmed my way through it. I feel like I probably would have gotten in more trouble, or people would have been more mad about it if they didn't also discover that I had an Irish accent. So apologizing in an Irish accent, all things are forgiven. And so my accent is definitely a fraction of what it used to be. But I had a very strong accent at that time. And so I feel like that got me out of a multitude of troubles. But I feel like it also brought me a lot more attention at the bar than I was comfortable with. I was used to being efficient. I was used to being a fast bartender. And so I wanted to get back to that style. And I would come over to talk to someone and try to tell them about a feature or whatever. And you see people stop listening to whatever you're talking about and they want to tell you the story immediately. And so I think that's where I start to hide my accent and get rid of it. But it was, I can't get around the fact that I'm 6'4" and ginger and look as Irish as I do. And so that part was always there and isn't going anywhere in a hurry.
I think it's really fun that you went from this hotel efficient bar, you said, into like an Outback, which is a national account, right? And so we're talking like an Applebee's situation or a TGI Fridays situation where a lot of the drinks for a bartender of your style would be considered like complex, because you are probably working with 3-4 ingredients with syrups and juices and, probably a multitude of different types of garnishes and specials that they run on the menu as well. So how is that, like, at the end of your shift, were you just like, holy shit, I'm so happy to be home? Like when you got to leave at the end of the day, because it would be exhausting.
I think it was an overwhelming overall experience. Everything was new.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I was in a new country with a whole new drinking style. I was away from home for the first time in my life. And so all of it, to be honest, is kind of a blur. Like I was building the plane while I flew it, of just figuring out college life and making money and interacting in college and doing all of that stuff and making new friends. And so for me, it was just working at that bar. The better that I was, the more money I had to be able to have a better experience. And so I've always been kind of that way of being self-sufficient and making my own money. And so the money that I was making was great.
What did you study in college?
Biology. I was going to school to be a physical therapist. And so
you're kidding.
That's what I originally wanted to be. And so that's the avenue that I went down. And life has a funny way of kind of showing you another route. And so once I finished with college and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do next after I gotten my degree, I decided that I was going to go off and live in New Zealand. Like New Zealand was going to be a good reset and a place to figure out like what would be the next adventure or whatever my next move would be. At this point, I had taken, long story short, but I had taken my time going through school because I was paying it off as I went. I wasn't able to get these same types of loans because I was an international student. And so I was paying off and working a couple of jobs to be able to make sure that I was staying on top of those. And so my program had changed from being a 4-year physical therapy program to now being a master's of physical therapy. So I changed to getting my bachelor's of science instead in physical therapy. It was now a bachelor's of science in biology with heading on to a master's. And so I wasn't sure whether or not I was going to continue with that. And so that was where New Zealand came in. And so over there, I discovered a deeper love for wine, and I also got into craft cocktails for the first time. So that was the next chapter, I guess, of my adventure.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Yeah.
So you're going from Ireland to Florida to New Zealand. Had you been to New Zealand before?
No, never.
Oh my
I had
God.
some family in Australia, and that was original thought process, but they were all the way. I guess the way that I look at it is not being from Australia. Australia is huge. It's almost like the US, right? Mm-hmm. And so where most people go to is like Sydney, which is essentially like the Florida of like in that geographical area of the US. And my family lived in the California, you know what I mean, in Perth, over on the other side of it. Okay. And so it was a big, where if I was being drawn to anywhere, it'd be Melbourne or Sydney. But I knew if I went to Australia, I would have to go over to the Perth side and make sure that I visit family. And so I thought about that. But my main goal was to be able to go to a country and to be able to see as much of it as possible in the time that I would have. And a year was the plan at that point. And so I wanted to work somewhere and travel. And New Zealand was the perfect place for that, of like just filled with what seemed like so much adventure, so much different places to visit. And I when looking at it, I thought for sure I could see everything I wanted to in a year or so. And so that's what I set out to do.
New Zealand's on like kind of like on one of my bucket list items. Let's see, I've not been, but I want to go there. What were some of the challenges that you overcame once you got to New Zealand? Because I can't imagine being dropped into a country that I hadn't been to. You know, you're going to be there for a year. You have to do something.
I guess to me, this was the opposite end of what I had come into in Florida. I had worked in bars and restaurants throughout college. And so we came over, my partner at the time, she worked in restaurants as well. We worked together, and that's how we had met. And we had decided to travel together. And so we found out fairly quickly about this new restaurant that was opening, and they hired me to be the bar manager, and they hired her to be the service manager. And that was a very loose term, just more of a supervisor, not really like running a program or anything like that. But it gave us a really quick opportunity to be able to be in there and to be like teaching people our style. This was just outside of Auckland, and service wasn't a big focus out there. And so like, again, kind of like what I had learned in Ireland, that people were there and efficient and making sure that they were doing the steps of service, but the steps of service were just the minimal things of making sure that everything was rang in the right way. And if you ticked all those boxes, you gave great service. And we were like, but what if instead of dropping off a bottle of water and 4 glasses for the 4-top, that you actually passed out those water glasses and you filled up that, you know what I mean, just that additional step that no one was really like, it's a tiny thing, but just a small example of like that extra stuff. And we would do tiny things like that. Or another example of like taking people's food when they were finished and offering to box it up instead of just being like, here's boxes. We had worked in some great places and learned some good tips of service. And so when we did that, we were showing these servers and bartenders how much tips that we were making, because it was a well-paid job based on the fact that most people were not getting tips. And so it was an awesome opportunity to be able to do that. And also just really develop my like passion for showing how service can be like perceived, instead of it being an expected thing. Like I think that it is in the US, and it's just a part of our culture now. When you can wow someone with it, I think service like that can be just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So you're in New Zealand for a year. Where do you go from there?
From New Zealand, we ended up getting an additional 6 months added onto our visa to be able to stay there a little bit longer because of us working in the wine world. So that gave us an additional extra bit of time over there. And during that time, we just did adventures from like top to bottom. And so when our time was fully finished, we basically spent every penny that we had, and we were coming back to Texas, where her family was living at that point. They had just moved there. And so we came back to kind of restart and reset and go from there. And so, yeah, Texas is the next chapter, I guess.
Texas is a next chapter, and Texas is its own country in itself. So let's talk about Texas. Like, what'd you do?
So in the beginning, I had come back with this like renewed the discovery of craft cocktails, and also was still pretty high on wine. I love getting to visit all of the different wine regions of New Zealand. And so I was between working at restaurants. My partner had gone on to like follow her degree and go into a job that followed into what she had studied for. I was looking to get into quick restaurant and quick bartending work, because just to start making money again. And so I started working at restaurants. I worked at a wine store and started studying to do my SOM. And so I did my level 1 and then started to work at a restaurant where I could get more service experience to be able to study for my level 2. Ended up getting that done. I sound like I was flighty, but everything was just kind of working towards this one thing that really built up my palate. Learning how to do craft cocktails and learning the history of them was something really great. But I feel like had I not done the steps of the studying for a SOM, building up my palate and recognizing flavors wouldn't have made me where I got to be. You know what I mean? Like those things connected for a really good reason.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I don't think that anybody's journey is so straightforward. How boring would that be? You know, I mean, Christ, I've been a flight attendant, worked in every style of bar that you can imagine. And I worked dish at one point. So flighty is not even considered in hospitality. I think
it's a very common denominator. If there was one thing that connected us, it's that we all like are kind of have a different path to get there, but we end up in similar spaces. So
okay. So we're not using the degree.
Not using the degree. No. And like at this point, I'm realizing that this is something that I'm very passionate about, that I love doing, that I wake up looking forward to it. And I've made friends at this point all over the world from doing it. And so I started to take the craft stuff a little bit more serious. Got a chance to work at some great bars and restaurants in the Dallas area, and eventually got to run a very successful one in Dallas. And so that led me to, I opened and ran that bar for almost 3 years. It just celebrated its 10th year anniversary. So that was a very cool thing to be a part of. And that was where like I kind of made a name for myself in the craft cocktail world. Started doing some cocktail competitions. And then from there, got an opportunity. I was selected for Margarita of the Year with Patron, and I got an opportunity to go down to the Hacienda and to see Patron and how it was made. And then from there, long story short, but got offered a position with them, started consulting and helping them with some cocktail stuff because their marketing team was in Dallas, and I had an opportunity to work with them. And then they basically, with my mentor, David Allen, created a program for me to be able to work in. And so he was the director of trade advocacy and I was a manager of trade advocacy. And me and him ping-ponged around the US, building out that program and taking hundreds and hundreds, even thousands of bartenders over the 7 years that I worked for them down to the Hacienda to be able to kind of follow that same journey of learning about how that tequila is made.
Can you paint the picture of what it was like back then? Because, you know, just to show like the gravity and the weight of what you and David were doing, because it really was a time when advocacy teams didn't so much exist. So now it's such a common thing. But I know when you and David were paving that way, it just wasn't. Can you paint the picture and kind of that scope of what was happening in beverage during that time?
Yeah, I think at that time the good part was that the USBG, I feel like, had a more solid presence across the US. Now there's some great pockets, but I feel like across the US in general, there was a great It was very well received and had good numbers across there. And so learning to work with them was one thing, but trying to figure out, especially with a brand like Patron, who had a lot of preconceived ideas. It's one thing to work with a brand that people have never heard of and you're trying to get them to discover it. It's almost harder to be trying to change someone's opinion that is already made up about something that they believe it just is this way. And that's kind of what David and I had to be able to figure out how to do. Thankfully, we worked under a CMO who had started 2 or 3 years before us and had kind of paved the way for that. He had discovered what Patron was doing, how it was made, and was like, you guys need to crack the doors open. You need to let people down here and see what all is happening down here. Because these ideas of us saying, hey, we're protecting all of this, we're not telling people how it's made. It doesn't matter who, you know what I mean? A great example is like Bobby Hugel was a very passionate person about wanting to know more about how Patron was made. Like it felt like we weren't giving that information. We weren't taking their inquiry about it and wanting to know more seriously. And so working with passionate hospitality people like him and getting to show them how it was made and getting to open their eyes up to that, whatever their opinion is still after that point, just being able to buy a brand, being able to afford that opportunity of saying, hey, we want you to have all the evidence before you come up with a preconceived idea of what this is. And that was an awesome thing to do. It was a very slow moving boat. This was not going to be something that we were going to be able to turn around overnight. We had to really get it going in the right direction. But bit by bit, as we built that whole thing out and started to do more and more and build up that team, it was just an amazing thing to be a part of, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember the first time I went to the Hacienda, the Patron Hacienda, and I was just blown away by the thoughtfulness and the care that they really take in producing Patron, where on the outside world, I was feeling that most folks just thought they were drinking Patron and didn't even know they were drinking tequila. So what you and David were doing was incredibly important, I think, not only to the brand, but also to the category itself. Can we talk a little bit about that?
I think the biggest passion that I took on board and felt like if I was nervous about talking to someone about this or I don't like confrontation or anything like that. And I was never confrontational with it. But if I was worried about going in to talk to someone about what they would think about this, I always looked at the fact that at that point, they're well up over 2,500 employees. But I think in my early days, I think we would talk about 1,400. I think that was the least amount that we had during my tenure. And it was adding all the time, adding more and more people to it. But I felt like I represented these 1,400 people down in Mexico that worked for Patron with a great level of pride. Every time that I would bring people down and they would get to see it, their smiling faces and happy to come to work, and seeing them in the local towns of Etotonilco and stuff like that, wearing their Patron shirt as a badge of honor. You know what I mean? I remember working in not so great places where you can't wait to take your apron off or you can't wait to take your shirt off. You don't want anyone knowing that you're associated with that place. Whereas this was definitely a badge of honor and a proud thing that if you worked for this tequila distillery, people knew that you were making good money. They paid over and above what the minimum was, and that people were waiting for job opportunities to be able to come up in there because it was known as a very secure place to work at. You got buses to and from work. You had access to a doctor that was there 24 hours a day. A doctor or a nurse, someone from the medical team was there 24 hours a day. I'm remembering all of these stuff that I used to talk about all the time now. But there was all of these just different things that they had access to of where they felt like it was a good place to be working at. And I think that was something that always gave me I want you to know these things. And then I want you to taste it. And whatever your opinion is of the flavor, I can't change that if you don't like it as a taste. But if you're not buying it because you think it's commercially produced or it's mass produced or there are all sorts of rumors that I would hear, then let me at least be able to have an opportunity to talk to you and tell you about this story. And so that's kind of the way that we approach that.
Yeah. And you guys did a really good job of changing, so many minds. Like I said, not just about Patron, but I believe about the category as well, because it was leading the category. So you can, if you're making some changes there, you're making changes across the board. That tequila is made by people and it is, part of a culture. And, you need to maybe take a second look or a second sip.
Yeah. And that's what we were trying to do. So very proud of the work that we did with that team, and to see it continue and to see it thrive and flourish is a cool thing to know that I was a part of. So yeah, very, very good.
So from Patron, where'd you go?
I guess so. After we were acquired by Bacardi, there was some changes to the makeup of their approach of advocacy, and it was more localized. And so instead of having 4 people on the road covering the whole country, it was better for them to focus on major markets. And so different parts of our team got cut over a period of a few years, and eventually my ticket was punched. And so my time was done with that. And it was a hard thing to go through. And I understood it, and it's just a part of that world, but it was my first job, you know what I mean? A first job that I had ever been let go from. And so it was trying to reset and figure out if I was to go back to a place that I was very comfortable, like working in bars again, but also somewhere where what I loved doing, that opportunity to talk to bartenders and to advocate on their behalf. And that was a big part of what we were doing. Every time that like myself and David were building programs out, it wasn't about us trying to figure out how we could get bartenders to learn more about their brand, but what can we do to be able to teach bartenders as a whole about it? And so if we were teaching about additives, how can we teach them, instead of just the fact that Patron doesn't have any additives in it, how can we teach them how to identify additives so that they have that skill set and they can make decisions for themselves, is an example of it. And so during the last part of my time with Patron, we hired on a gentleman by the name of Roberto. And he was living in Boston at the time. He had kind of done something similar. He had been a part of a perfectionist competition with Patron. We had loved his style of talking about Patron, his passion for the brand. And he was also originally from Guadalajara and just had a fascinating story. And so to be able to, when he got brought on and became a part of our team, it was amazing to see him learn the stuff that we had talked about, teaching him about how Patron is. And then when he was talking about that subject to other people and listening to his class, it just meant so much more when someone is talking about it from their background, right? Like someone as a proud person of Guadalajara talking proudly about Patron. It was so powerful. And so I thought a lot about that when I was trying to figure out what I was doing. And I knew that was what I wanted to go after. I wanted to work with Irish whiskey and to be able to have that same passion of me being from Ireland and being very proud of it. I did great in the tequila world, but I don't speak Spanish. I don't look like I should be talking, you know what I mean? I stand out like a sore thumb when I'm down in Mexico. But I wanted to be able to take that same level of passion that I had for advocacy and channel it into something that's more near and dear to my heart. And so that's kind of where the next step led.
Well, let's talk about that next step and what you're doing today.
So now I am, for about the last year and a half, I've been the manager of advocacy for trade advocacy nationally for the Busker Irish whiskey, which is under the Di Serono portfolio. And so I had an opportunity. I interviewed with several different Irish whiskeys and had found out about the Busker. And I had heard some very, very cool stuff about it for it being relatively new, and did some deeper digging and knew that this was kind of the best possible opportunity for me to be able to work with a brand and to take it from like not turning it around or not trying to introduce a new story to it or work with a fake story, which I could never be able to do, but to be able to tell this brand story that I felt like wasn't out there as well as it could be. And so I literally had to call so many people to be able to get in front of the right person. The current way of going about applying for especially these types of jobs, your resume goes into a system, and there's so much of these like auto sending of email or of resumes and CVs that if you're on one of these sites that it's automatically sent. And so how they can possibly filter through and find you in the pile of all of these different things. And so I knew if I could just get someone to actually have eyes on my resume, and that's what I did. And it's one of the things that I would encourage anyone who wants to get into this, find something that you're passionate about and beat the door down to at least get a chance for them to say no to you personally. And that's what I was trying to do. And so I had to go literally through some friends who knew people in Italy to be able to get in contact and get my resume in front of the right people, and eventually got the job from it. And so it was great.
That's amazing. Did you feel like you were just coming home? I mean, an Irish guy born and bred, you are the category, let's say. What's that feeling like when you do go back home and you're representing the country honestly, spirit?
It gave me goosebumps just as you were asking that question, because I've thought about it myself a few times. It's like I love Mexican food, and I love all of the cuisine that I got when I was down there, and that I would go to those to Mexican restaurants across the US and got amazing stuff. But I'm a wuss when it comes to spicy stuff. You know what I mean? So I've always got to be cautious and careful on all that. But now when I'm able to go to Irish pubs around the country and to be talking about this whiskey and to be able to enjoy amazing Irish cuisine from chefs that have come over from Ireland and they're working in these bars, it's such it's such a perfect way of it all coming full circle. I've said it to others. I feel like I'm in my own skin finally, right? Of where I'm representing something that I'm passionate about. Because it's a good product, and also because when I get to go home and I'm at home, I'm 45 minutes away from the distillery. My parents live really, really close to it. And so it's something that I can represent, and just feel like I am my own authentic self. And so it's great.
Gosh, and that's so important, right? We've got to be able to show up authentic every single day and feel like we're part of something that connects to us. Where I know you did amazing work with Patron, and I thank you for that work because it opened up doors for so many people. But then just to come home, I mean, there's nothing better. There's nothing better. Was your grandfather able to see this part of your journey?
Fortunately not. He passed during my second year in college. And so thankfully, it was over Christmas break, and I ended up not going back after that next semester, but it was for a while I stayed home. But I got to be there for enough time to be around him when he passed. Instead of, I've touched wood, I've never had to go home for a funeral. It feels weird even saying that, where I found out about something. And it's always living far away from home, especially when I was in New Zealand. It's always a background fear of how long is it? If something happens, how long would it take for me to be able to get back to? And so I was very thankful to be able to be around him for that those last moments. He never got to see that part come through. So yeah, unfortunately.
I'm sure that he's with you today.
Absolutely.
What do you think he thinks
without
of all the cool things his grandson's doing in his homeland? 100%. It's like, holy shit.
Life. I feel like when you look for serendipity and sparkle in life, it's there for you. You know what I mean? Of finding all of these things. And I feel like that's one of the things. My grandfather was born and raised in the center of Dublin. And as a young boy, he would take me into the city all the time. He lived about 5-minute walk from an area called Stephen's Green, which was spelt in the same way as mine. And just off the corner of Stephen's Green is a street called Grafton Street. And that's the epicenter of busking, busking is like guitar playing, right? Getting out on the street, playing your guitar, having your guitar case open. And that is where you would see artists really start off their career. Bono and The Edge started off as buskers in Dublin. Ed Sheeran, when he was younger, his family is from Ireland. He would come over from the UK and busk on that same street in Grafton Street in Dublin, and tons more. I'm blanking on names now, but tons and tons more of famous Irish artists started in that area. And so that is a very, very core memory of mine. There's every year on Christmas Eve, there's the Christmas Eve busk. And if you ever are bored, just go to YouTube and type that in, and you will see on that street in Grafton Street, you'll see Bono and these different like famous Irish artists that will come out every year. Crowds are crazy. They have some police around them, but it's generally really not all that secure, because it's all to raise money for the homeless on that night. And they do this huge sing along, and it's just incredible. And so busking is such a big part of that culture in Ireland. And so it's very, very much full circle to be a
And
part
this is
of
on
a
Christmas
whiskey that
Eve?
represents that. Christmas Eve. Yeah, the Christmas Eve busk. Yeah.
How did I not know this? I'm a
yeah.
U2 fan, man. I've actually
You'll
slept out
find it.
overnight, like to make
Yeah.
sure I was in the pit at their concerts at Soldier Field. Every single time that I've seen them, I've been in the front row every
Wow.
single time, because I've always slept out overnight in a tent in the lawn at Soldier Field. Every
That's
single
amazing.
time. Me and my cousins, like, we're nuts about them. I did not know that. And now that's on my bucket list too. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'll be
And
doing
still
that.
doing it to this day. It's very, very cool to see. So I remember the other guy's name is Glenn Hansard. And he is, if you've never seen a movie, another recommendation I would tell you, it's called Once. It was made into a musical that was on Broadway. But the original movie is Glenn Hansard. He's a ginger with a ginger beard. I've gotten to meet him and actually drank with him one time. He is an amazing, amazing, passionate advocate for music in Ireland, and he's one of the leaders of this Christmas Eve busk. I just think it's very, very cool to see that this is such a part of the culture of Ireland, and especially part of the culture of Dublin. Something that was just a part of my childhood growing up with my grandfather, who literally held my hand to be able to get the job that started off this career path. And so I guess I'm really thankful for you of filling in the dots, because that's the first time that I've ever like kind of tied it all together. I'm literally looking at there's a bag on my wall that says it's from this band that plays in there. I think you can read it. It's backwards though, right?
No, it's not backwards. It says the best buskers in the world are made on Grafton Street, Ireland. That's awesome.
It's
with love, Key West.
Yeah. And so this is one of these bands that plays on there and are famous for it. And so I got that bag one day when I was home during my first year of working for the busker. And so it's just kind of a cool little memory for me. But
that's incredible. I knew about I know of a lot of the bands that come out of Ireland, right? But I didn't realize how important music was to the Irish culture. Can you talk about that just a little bit?
Yeah, for sure. And I think like Glenn Hansard is a perfect example of that. That guy in Once is literally about a busker. During the day he's on that street in Grafton Street, playing like the Beatles and the popular songs to be able to make money. And then at night, he's on this quiet street where he gets to sing his heart out and like really let his passion of his songs show. He meets an Eastern European immigrant. I believe she's Romanian, but I'm not sure. But anyway, she sees him singing at night. She plays the piano and is an amazing singer as well. And they partner up and they produce an album through it. And that's what basically this song this movie's about. It won an Oscar for best soundtrack or best song or something like that. Wow. Way back in the day. Yeah, so definitely a good one. But like the Irish in general, if you go to an Irish bar, we've all seen the pictures and videos of like traditional music. And it's just a part of our culture. Like if you go into these pubs, it's not like it's set up as a touristy thing. You go all across Ireland. It's just our way of entertaining ourselves. You know what I mean? If you have a skill and if you can sing or you can play an instrument, whatever it may be, you bring it with you to the bar and you're going to get an opportunity to be able to do it. And if you just like to hear that stuff, then you just come along and drink and be a part of it. And so all the time in like some amazing artists have come out of Ireland, but we've also have like the European Song Contest where we were winning that song contest is showing our musical style and our like how we've had music as a part of our culture for that, when we hosted it, Riverdance became like one of the interim acts during the Eurovision Song Contest when we hosted it in Ireland, and that became this worldwide phenomenon. And so
it really did.
Yeah,
I mean, that was huge.
It's massive.
Yeah,
and that was like something that again put the Irish on the map. And I think it's amazing when you look at the size of our island, how well we are known around the world. So unfortunately, we're known for our drinking, but we're also known for our music and being just an amazing people to be around. You know what I mean? It's one of the friendliest countries that you can ever go and visit. Super hospitable. And and so I'm very, very proud to be from Ireland and to be Irish. And then to be representing an Irish whiskey that's a part of it is a great thing.
Absolutely. I think it's such an incredible, inspiring story. And I've been to Ireland quite a few times. My grandmother, Mary Beth, was from Ireland. That's on my father's side. His dad was from Poland. His mother was from Ireland. On the other side of the family were Italian. So there you have it. But I've been back to Ireland quite a few times. And what I find so interesting is that every time that I've gone into a pub, is that every freaking age is there. I just can't get over it. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's like you've got the elderly down to the young folks all together. And usually there's like a sing along going on. And that's been my experience. I'm like, it's so inclusive. It's borderline ridiculous. It's just amazingly warm and fun.
And I think it takes a little bit more. It takes multiple visits, like what you said, of getting to see. Because if you just go over, a lot of people go over and they like want to tick the boxes, and they maybe do a 3-day stop off, and then they go throughout Europe, or it's their last leg of a European trip or whatever.
Right.
And then you just see a lot of Irish people in pubs, and it makes you feel like, yeah, that's right. The Irish people just love to drink, but it's so much more than that. If you did the same thing and you looked at Starbucks as you walk through New York, you'd swear that like you could say that Americans are just coffee addicts. We are like, right. But it's so much more than that in Ireland, that going to those pubs and that is just a part of cultural, like that's our connection to each other. That's where you get the news of what's going on in your neighborhood. You have your local, you go to the same place, you meet the same people all the time. You have this like social interaction of like the tabs and stuff are still the same way as what I grew up with. You do your round, you sit down with 6 people, you go up and you're buying those 6 drinks. And unless someone bows out, you're keeping on with that tab and you don't leave until you've paid your way around that thing. And so big groups can get a little messy, but like that part of that style of it, where you're locked in and you're engaging and you're in this core group for a long period of time, just makes for the best of nights. It's not over here. We like to jump around from different bars and to see what's happening next. And we're kind of flighty with that. People go to these bars and they just sit for hours and hours and are great conversationalists because of that. So.
Yes, they really are. And the other thing that I've learned from my time in Ireland, one time my husband and I, we rented a car with some friends, and this wasn't that long ago, and we just headed south. And we had no place to stay. We knew we were going to be there for like 9 days. And we just decided we'll just, figure it out as we go. And if we see something cool, we'll pull over. And we had just like the best adventure, let me tell you, because we took every tip on where to go next, not only from pub owners, but also from artisans. So we'd stop in a place where people were making wool sweaters, like whatever it is, whatever their arts and crafts were. And we would talk to them. And can I tell you, every single time that person would be so freaking excited. Yeah. Like, you got to go to this town. It's my uncle. He's working today, or my grandma, which happened. And we're going to call and tell him that you're coming, to the point where we felt like we were part of someone's family the whole trip. We were blown away. Not one time did somebody say like, go to this national chain, or, ew, you're American, get out of here. Go back to, go back to our big city, go back to Dublin. No, in these small towns, I'm telling you, every single person, we met their uncle, their aunt, their grandma at one point. It was such a memorable, I have all these photos with all these strangers versus all these touristy things. My husband and I were like, we love it here. Everybody's so kind. And they wanted us to not only be a part, right, of that magic, But I felt like everybody wanted us to love Ireland as much as they do.
Yeah. Huge national pride. And then the total opposite of gatekeepers. You know what I mean? They want everyone to be as proud of what this tiny island as they are. And I think it's interesting. Like it's this hospitality, this sense of hospitality, and it really is. It's the same in great bar areas that where you will see the same thing. That if you go into a city and you find a great bartender, and a perfect example, like not. We all have the same liquid in our bars. We can all make pretty much the same drinks, but it's the one that shows you that hospitality and the passion for what they do, and then the passion for their city. You know what I mean? That recognize that it's not just about keeping you in that bar for the rest of the night. That like bartender's handshake of like sending you off to another, you know what I mean? I miss the days of the boomerang.
And calling ahead.
Yeah,
not just saying like, we're going to let them know that you're coming.
Yeah.
And then being greeted by someone's family, and it was always somebody's like family member greeting you, and we loved like seeing like local art, local things. So it's like across the board for hospitality, right? That's the only time I've ever experienced that in any country, and I've traveled the world.
It's the best. It really is. Really, really good.
It's amazing. Yeah. What's next for you, Stephen?
This is now the calm part. I just got back from being in New York for 5 days. And so I get to relax this week, where I know this will probably air later on, but this is the week of Thanksgiving. And so it's not a holiday that I've ever celebrated. I've gone to friends' houses for it. And I love being around family, but it always makes me more homesick than instead of me just saying, you know, I'm going to bow out of this. It's not a tradition I grew up with. I love it for you guys. I would much rather be able to be at home, call my parents and have a quick chat, but it's a normal Thursday for them all the time. And so we're just going to have a quick call and check in, and then just have some like my own time. And I think I'm just at that point in my life where I'm like, I don't have other friends want me to be there more so because they feel bad about someone being on their own at Thanksgiving. For me, it's not. Christmas is a different one. You know what I mean? I do like to be around people on that if I'm not around my own family. But for Thanksgiving, I'm happy to sit that one out and just maybe watch some football later in the afternoon and chill out. But yeah, it's that's going to be this week is back to a little bit of a normality.
That's great. And there are a few wonderful movies that are showing right now as well, which might be an option for you. I just saw Wicked the other night, and it was so fabulous.
I'm nervous about it, mainly because I've listened to the new sound. I'm a huge fan of Wicked. My first time ever going to New York, quick story. I was living in Florida and my parents wanted to go, and my younger brother was traveling with them. And he, my youngest brother, and he and I and my parents all were going by and seeing the hype of Wicked. I think Wicked had been open about a year, maybe a little bit less. But we had heard about the ticket raffle. And so we signed up for that and were there at the right time for it. And when the names were drawn, the only one that was drawn was my brother, and he won 2 tickets. We were center, orchestra front. And then my parents bought some cheaper tickets and they were in the back. They had flown in that day. I'm so glad I wasn't sitting next to them because I would have just been mortified. But apparently they slept through the whole thing, like just jet-lagged out. Well, me and my brother, front row, and this is the days of Kristen Chenoweth and Idina Menzel.
Oh so my God, Stephen, stop it.
I peaked very early. Yeah. So I've been a fan of Wicked for a very long time. And so I've been very excited about this. Last week was busy. And this weekend was just kind of prepping for some different stuff. And so I'm looking forward to it, but I'm nervous about hearing people singing along in the thing. I've heard mixed reports.
So no one sang along when I saw it. Okay. No one sang along, but they do sing live in the movie itself. And
it's different versions of the songs. Like it's not exact.
It's amazing. And all the sets are real.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. And Cynthia, who plays Elphaba, did all of her own stunts while singing. I have goosebumps right now. I'm not going to ruin it for you, but
it's unreal.
I had tears.
I can't wait. I really can't wait. And yet there's lots of great movies. So that one's highest on the list for this week. And so I'm definitely going to be able to knock that one out. Probably multiple times. I've heard a lot of people say that once you see it once, it's going to.
Yeah, I'm going again this weekend to see it.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
I'm very, very excited for that.
That's great. And then The Gladiator is out as well.
Yeah, that's another good one that I'm looking forward to. I saw some people with mixed reports on it, but I'm definitely going to give it a chance. It's just one of those cool action movies that you got to see. So
absolutely.
Yeah,
well, I am so happy that you came. Yes, I'm so happy that you came on Served Up today. Your story is incredibly inspiring. You know, going from your homeland to places you've never been, man. I can't even imagine just picking up and moving all the way across the world. It's insane. And how that's been such a lovely thread in your story. And then how it just ties it all together, you know, with Patron and then coming back with Busker. It's just beautiful. And I just want to thank you. I know that we inspired some folks today to maybe take that step, right? Be bold. And don't be afraid to take a jump. You could fail, but man, you might succeed.
Right. Most likely you will. There's some, I would just like echo it back to you. I love that I got the opportunity to be on this. I've listened to a bunch of your shows and I've been kind of having them on a regular thing just to see the different personalities and the different people that you get on here. And then hearing some small tidbits about your family and your stories and sharing that. But just bringing this to such a great channel and great audience is such a cool thing. And I'm very, very thankful to be a part of it. So very cool.
Well, thank you, Stephen. I do hope that she'll come back on the show.
Yeah.
And I just want to, you know, just wish you a lot of great health and some peace, man. Thank you for being on Served Up.
Absolutely. Thank you. Same. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening. Served Up is brought to you by Southern Glazers Wine and Spirits. Produced by Zunu.online. Music by We Killed the Lion can be found on Spotify. Make sure to subscribe to be notified of our future Served Up episodes. Cheers.